welcome everyone to our electronic council meeting on December the 16th, 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Regional Council is practicing physical distancing, and the majority of councillors are participating electronically. Councillor Strickland and I and staff are in the council chambers. In an attempt to speed up things, we have assigned a mover and a seconder, and I will read these out, and then I will state the result of the vote. We should all recognize the history that brought us to this point in our unique and continuing relationship with the Indigenous people. What I have learned over the years from the Indigenous teachings is to be respectful, grateful, and protective of our tie to the land. The nature of this tie is not so much one of ownership, but one of stewardship. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the land traditionally used by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. I also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. I would also like to note that this is the seventh night of Hanukkah, and we wish everyone celebrating that religious festival the very best. I would now ask Mrs. Fletcher to conduct the roll call.
And in the words of Councillor Strickland, I will start at the back of the line this evening. Councillor Vrbanovic.
Well, that would be the top of the line, so hi, I'm here.
Councillor Strickland.
I think the clerk paraphrased, but I am here.
Councillor Shantz.
Here.
Councillor Nowak. Councillor McGarry.
Present, middle of the pack.
Councillor Lorentz. Councillor Lorentz.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Councillor Kiefer.
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Jowett.
Here also.
Councillor Jaworski.
Here.
Councillor Harris.
Present.
Councillor Galloway.
Here.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Erb.
Here.
Councillor Clark.
Here.
Councillor Armstrong.
Here.
Chair Redman.
Present.
All present and accounted for.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. There are no presentations, petitions, or delegations. The minutes of the previous meetings. We'll now have a motion to approve the minutes from previous meetings as listed. Are there any comments on the minutes that anyone would like pulled out? This is moved by Councillor Jaworski and seconded by Councillor Jowett, and they run A through K. I just see people voting. That's great. If you would use your yes and no icons, that would be great. And that motion is carried. Colleagues, the councillor information package on Wednesday, December the 9th was distributed electronically. I leave those for your information unless anyone wants to pull one out to discuss or has a question or a comment on them. A motion to go into the Committee of the Whole to consider reports. This is moved by Councillor Kiefer and seconded by Councillor Lorentz that the Council go into the Committee of the Whole to consider reports. I'd ask you to please use your yes and no icons. They're basically X's and check marks, but you guys know that. That is carried. We will now have one motion to accept all of the finance reports. If anyone has any comments, please indicate by raising your hand. This motion is moved by Councillor McGarry and seconded by Councillor Nowak. These finance reports are extensive, A through, oh, not that extensive, D, I guess. So would you please use your icons to vote? That is carried, colleagues. We'll now have a vote to accept the Board of Health summary. This is moved by Councillor Harris and seconded by Councillor Jowett. That is carried, colleagues. We'll now start a vote to accept the Committee of the Whole summary. This is moved by Councillor Clark and seconded by Councillor Vrbanovic. This is the extensive one. That is carried. We have a closed Committee of the Whole. Was that part of that motion? That was part of that motion, colleagues. We'll now start a vote to accept closed Committee of the Whole summary. This is moved by Councillor Erb and seconded by Councillor Vrbanovic. I'd also note that this includes several appointments by regional council to various committees.
Councillor Redman, there's a hand up.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway, you have a question or a comment?
Well, Madam Chair, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to mention this or not, but I was informed earlier today that this, I think, also includes a recommendation from the closed meeting of earlier today. Report TES TRS 20-21 PDL LEG 20-66. I'm not sure if I was informed, I was sent an email on that, and I wasn't sure if I was supposed to mention it or whether or not this is the matter related to kind of a settlement agreement with the transit advertising.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway. It is not in my Is it part of this motion? Okay, we're going to make it part of this motion. Thank you, Councillor Galloway. So now I would ask you to please vote with your icons. Thank you. Now we will be voting on the budget, and this is moved by Councillor Strickland, seconded by Councillor Jowett. Deals with the water and wastewater supply and treatment that we dealt with today. Retail distribution. I see no speakers, so I would ask you use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried. We'll now consider a vote to accept the closed council summary of the whole. This is moved by Councillor Erb and seconded by Councillor Fox. We don't need to do that now? Oh, we just did that one. So any comments from the Chief Administrative Officer? I have no comments. Appointments to the Sunnyside Board, Regional Clerk.
Just as printed, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
We have to confirm these appointments, just so you're aware.
These appointments are to be confirmed. This is moved by Councillor Vrbanovic and seconded by Councillor Armstrong. That is carried. Matters under the Committee of the Whole will now start a vote on the report HRC-PER-20-03. This is moved by Councillor Clark and seconded by Councillor Erb. That is to submit an application to the Audit Fund from the province, as well as Phase 2 of the peer-based Sharps retrieval pilot project. That is carried. We'll now start a vote for the Committee of the Whole to rise and Council to resume, and this is moved by Councillor Foxton and seconded by Councillor Galloway, that the Committee of the Whole rise and Council to resume. That is carried. We'll now start a vote to adopt the proceedings of the Committee of the Whole. This is moved by Councillor Harris and seconded by Councillor Jaworski. That is carried. We have no motions, no notices of motion. Any unfinished business? Under other business is a COVID-19 update, and I would call on Dr. Hsiu-Li Wang, our Medical Officer of Health, to give us an update. Welcome, Dr. Wang.
Thank you, Chair Redman. So Jessica has kindly agreed to help me project the slides. Thank you. So if we go to the next slide, current status of COVID-19 in our region. So I have a somber message about the current status of COVID-19. Our healthcare system is under very heavy strain. In communities that are ahead of us in their COVID trajectory, the situation in their hospitals is even more significant. The latest provincial modeling shows that although the provincial framework, the measures under the framework imposed to date, prevented an escalation to 6,500 cases per day in Ontario or 260 cases per day in Waterloo region by mid-December, Ontario is still reporting daily case numbers that continue to rise. And rates in multiple areas of the province, in particular in the red and lockdown zones, continue to climb. Locally, our case rates continue to be high and unstable, potentially tipping at any moment into further growth. As anticipated, after a rapid rise in case numbers in the previous weeks, we are now seeing what other places in Ontario have seen after case rates rise. One, increases in hospitalizations, ICU admissions, and sadly deaths. Two, a growing number of outbreaks, and in some cases, very significant spread in long-term care and retirement homes. If we go to the next slide, please. The second wave is a significant threat to our community. As we've seen, high rates of transmission not only affect the individual health of residents and their families, but it can destabilize the healthcare system. And it can lead to the need for a broad-based lockdown. Next slide, please. So this type of strain that we're now experiencing on our healthcare system is not sustainable over a long period of time. In terms of next steps, as has happened every week to date, I expect to speak with the Chief Medical Officer of Health before Friday, and I will be discussing with him the best path forward for our region. Due to the serious impacts that are now being felt in our healthcare system and the need to not delay if we need to act, we need to be prepared for the possibility of lockdown. And finally, in addition to the restrictions in the provincial framework, each one of us needs to start or continue to drastically reduce our social interactions. especially this upcoming holiday season. We need to only have social interactions with people in our immediate household. We need to only go out for essential purposes. And this holiday season, we need to not socially gather. So that's my update, Council. I'm happy to take questions.
So, Dr. Wang, I see no, oh, Councillor McGarry.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to Dr. Wang. Certainly, it sounds like a serious situation. And my question is really around the healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
We have a certain amount of beds. I know that our hospitals have considered surge capacity and opening up beds elsewhere. But my concern is about some of the trends that we're seeing now in some of the illness as well as self-isolation or isolation that our hospital and healthcare staff have to go under. So I'm wondering if you could sort of give an update on our human health resources and talk a little bit about what might happen if we don't have enough staff, or whether we have limited staff to care for those that are sick in our healthcare system.
Dr.
Yes.
Wang?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, Mayor McGarry, thank you for that question. It's an important facet of the pandemic. I think oftentimes, the work that's done by our healthcare partners can go largely, unseen, in the sense that they are working extremely hard around the clock in these very difficult times. And people may not recognize that because of the high rates that we've experienced and the consequences of that, which lead to many people being sick, many outbreaks occurring, and even in hospitals, and many situations where hospitals and other healthcare partners have to support parts of our system that are really struggling, such as homes with significant spread. All of this taxes greatly the healthcare providers that are doing this work. And you can open more hospital beds, but you only have a limited number of doctors, nurses, and other professionals that can do certain procedures or interventions for patients. And so right now there is great strain across the system, not only because healthcare workers have to care for so many people, but because they themselves are also falling sick. And so there's less of them. And they are also working extremely grueling hours because of the need. And so this is really likely the most burdensome issue for our healthcare system. That is, the pressure that is on our healthcare workers, and the fact that there's not an unlimited supply of them, and they are working at their capacity. So this is really, again, worrisome, and it speaks to why COVID is a very significant threat in our community in this second wave, because our health system is extremely strained at this time.
Councillor McGarry, do you have another question?
I have a follow-up. Thanks, Madam Chair. And it's, I certainly understand what you're saying. I know that intensive care unit nurses or critical care nurses are highly specialized, and there's only sort of certified or highly specialized medical personnel like nurses that can manage ventilated patients. Is there a strategy to try and train more hospital personnel in order to try and maintain our critical care services?
Yeah, I'm really speaking from what the hospital CEOs tell me, but I know that they are constantly, trying to make sure that they train as many people as they can, and they can upstaff as much as they can. They're constantly trying to have redundancies and backups for things. So I'm confident that they're doing as much as they can in that regard to try and shore up staffing through training people, for example. But again, when the spread is as significant as it is in the red and lockdown zones, and when the pace at which the demands keep coming in is high like this, there's just a limit that we have in the system in terms of available people at any one time. But I know they're doing their best to try to reinforce staffing.
Thank you. We need to protect our healthcare workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGarry. Councillor Jowett.
Thank you, Chair Redman. So, Dr. Wang, we hear your somber tone. You've made that very clear, and your articulation is even more clear. And of course, Councillor Erb spoke of the weight of your decisions, and we note that you're not taking any of those lightly at all. We've tried to balance our economy and safety, but I'm in fear that the time for immediate and clear measures has come. For our recovery, the disappointment of the lost Christmas of 2020 will only help us be together in 2021. I endorse and support and strongly advise that your words be heard, and encourage you to contribute this strong message going forward to as many places that can hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jowett.
Thank you, Councillor Jowett. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Well said, Councillor Jowett. My question is a little more for people to know what to expect. So if we go into lockdown, what kind of timeframes does that usually run?
Well, to date, what's happened is if they announce lockdown for a region, they would announce it on a Friday, and it would come into effect on the following Monday. So that's what's happened to date. But I also know, we're coming up to the Christmas season, and I'm not exactly sure. We're never exactly sure. When something will affect until the province has announced it. So we'll have to see, but that's what's happened to date.
And the duration generally is several.
Yeah, so as part of the provincial framework, anytime a region enters a level above, green, it would stay in that level for a minimum of 4 weeks. That's because 4 weeks represents 2 incubation periods for this virus, and would be sort of the minimum amount of time you'd have to give measures to be able to, see some improvement if the measures are working. So that's why it would be a minimum of 4 weeks, and it would be assessed, after that time, or actually just before that time, to see whether there's a need to continue them or not.
Councillor Shantz.
No, thank you, and just thank you to you and your team and everyone who's working on this for all your hard work. Really appreciate it. I know it's draining and you take it very seriously.
Councillor Vrbanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair Redman, and thank you, Dr. Wang, for your frank but honest assessment of the situation where we're in the region and in the province right now. And I think several of my colleagues raised and shared some of the concerns that I have, and not the least of which is the fact that we have a healthcare sector and first responders that, quite frankly, are tired. They continue to get up every day to serve our community, to do what they need to do to keep people healthy. But the situation is only getting more challenging and is starting to impact them, as we know, with some of them either getting COVID themselves or being put into a situation where they're quarantined for a period of time until they can demonstrate that they in fact haven't been exposed to the virus. And so I take comments very seriously that, and I think part of the message that we need to deliver to the residents of our community is that, quite frankly, the best Christmas gift we can give these people, the least selfish Christmas gift we can give these people who have been looking after our community for the past 9 months, is to do the right thing and to stay away from others, stay within our own family bubble, our own household, and not gather with other people, as hard as that's going to be over the coming days. And so I would certainly urge others to do that. I think Councillor Jowett was very appropriate with her comments. We are at a situation where we do need to look at more severe actions, as you've indicated. And one of the things I'm wondering if you can comment on, we certainly heard in Quebec that the decision was made to use the holiday period as almost a natural shutdown. Schools will be closed anyway, and use the close of business on Christmas Eve as a period to start that kind of shutdown. Is that something that we should be advocating to the province for as elected officials?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Vrbanovic. I do think stronger measures for the areas that are continuing to see growth, lockdown and red zones, are warranted. I think this idea of a potential period where things would be enacted when there's a sort of a natural slowdown is an option that needs to be seriously considered. I think I do believe that there are options that are being discussed at the provincial level. Ultimately the decision will be cabinets, but I think this is an option that has a lot of merit, and that should be seriously looked at.
Well, thank you for that for that frank comment, and certainly if the opportunity is there, we will convey that message. And I too just want to add my voice in thanks to you and your team who have. December 25th is going to mark 9 months since we declared the emergency. Your team obviously had been working on it for several weeks prior to that already. So I'm sure they're exhausted, and yet it's clear the next phase of hard work is just beginning. And so thank you, and all the best to you and your group. Hopefully you get a little bit of a a rest over the holidays.
Thank you very much. I'll pass that on.
Thank you, Councillor Lorentz.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you again, Hsiu-Li. You look tired.
Yeah.
I can see why. Dr. Wang, I just wanted to follow up on the incubation periods that you had talked about. And maybe you could give us a little better understanding. You said it would be 2 incubation periods. When that's happened in the past, the precedent in the province, has there been a difference?
Well, yeah, what has happened is actually, we were on a trajectory according to the provincial science table, who does the modeling for the province. We were on a trajectory to hit around 6,500 cases per day in Ontario, or 260 cases per day in Waterloo Region by now. That was the prediction before the province put in place the framework and the restrictions. So on one hand, the restrictions, including the difficult red one that we've been in for 3 weeks now, that has had an effect in preventing this continual growth that would have been really very severe. But at the same time, it hasn't had an effect. And we see this in other red regions and also lockdown regions. It hasn't really had an effect on reversing the trend. You actually still see overall a continual growth, just at a slower pace. And this is worrisome because you don't want to see growth after a couple of incubation periods, 4 weeks. You want to see evidence that it's not only stabilizing, but starting to go down. And so far, overall, you're seeing it still continue to climb or remaining quite unstable. And so that's a sign that, more needs to be done. And what that will be exactly, is not known at this time. But I think it's a sign that while the measures that have been put in place have had impacts, there's a need for stronger measures to start to really slow the spread and start to reverse it, so that regions can, leave lockdown and go down, leave red and go to orange, etc. Like that reversal of the trends needs to happen, and it's so far not happening in Ontario, and in our region we still do have high rates.
Councillor Lorentz, do you have another question?
Let me rephrase it a different way.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
The regions are the areas in Ontario right now that are in lockdown. That's
red. Yes.
No, well, say gray, the gray area, right? So that's the furthest measure you can take, correct?
And we're at about 2,000 cases a day instead of 6,500. That's a sign that the measures have worked to a significant degree, but just not enough to start to slow down the rates and start to reverse them.
So one last question, and then I'll let you go. A few weeks ago, you had said that we were 4th worst in Ontario. I think last week you said we're the 10th. Where are we today? Do you know?
Yeah, it fluctuates, Councillor Lorentz. We can be as high as 4. We can go down to 10. Most days when I take a look at it, we're 6th or 7th. That kind of tends to be where we are, which is consistent with our color ranking, because the highest areas are the areas in gray, lockdown, and then after you see all the successive red zones. So we tend to be just like, in the middle with the other red zones.
Okay, well, thank you very much to you and your team and for keeping us safe. We appreciate it.
Thank you,
Madam.
Councillor Lorentz. Councillor Kiefer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just very quickly, Dr. Wang, wanted to thank you for you and your team and the work that you're doing. I most heartedly agree, of course, with my colleagues, Councillor Jowett and Councillor McGarry and the rest of council members that have expressed their support. And you are doing a good job in the service for the region of Waterloo, and we really appreciate it. So I just wanted you to know that. Thank you.
I see no other speakers, so I just want to add my voice, Dr. Wang, for the outstanding service that you've done for all of us. And I think probably echo Councillor Jowett's comments, and that is that you have the full support of this council as municipal leaders at the region, as well as the Board of Health. So there's no daylight between your hard work and our support of that, and I know that that's something that the province watches. I've received phone calls and proactively made phone calls, so you need to know that the full weight of this council as a Board of Health and as municipal leaders is absolutely behind you. Thank you very much, and thank you for the active role you're taking on the vaccine rollout. It's like you didn't need another hat, but you took another one on anyway. So thank you and your staff. I know Karen Quigley-Hobbs is part of that, and she's part of the vaccine rollout normally, and we have many other players, the hospitals and the primary care workers as well as paramedics, but led by the police because it is a paramedic initiative. Dr. Wang?
If I could just add, my team and I are truly very appreciative for the ability to leverage, multiple partners, police, our emergency services partners, our regional department partners, our community and healthcare partners. To be able to work together and collaborate together on this vaccine rollout, it is a truly wonderful thing to be able to work on it. And I think, the fact that we're doing it together, leveraging everyone's strengths and, being able to help each other out because we're all, very busy with different things. I think that's just going to be very helpful in terms of our ability to roll this out effectively and efficiently. And so I really want to thank Council for their support and you, Chair Redman, and for designating, establishing this task force, allowing the partners to work together this way. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for all your outstanding work. And you really are a collaborator and a team player. And I think that shows by the relationships that you have. So I have two other items under other business. The next one is Councillor Michael Harris, an update on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Over to you, Councillor Harris.
Unmute. Okay, well, thanks, Chair Redman. I'll be brief. I just felt it was important. I did update my colleagues earlier this week, but I did want to take an opportunity at Council in public to address an issue that came before me, I guess, back in early 2019. For those that don't know, the Municipal Conflict of Interest was enacted by the province to maintain transparency and municipal decision-making. The purpose of the MCIA is to ensure that elected municipal officials do not profit or seek an unfair benefit because of the office they hold when called upon to vote on matters in which they may have a direct or indirect interest. In January of 2019, I brought forward a resolution on a matter that I had worked for years and years on, the Fair and Open Tendering Act, which of course the province took as part of a bill. And I brought forward a resolution before Council, which was endorsed unanimously by Council. For that, I thank them for it. Just last week, I was pleased that after a grueling, almost 2-year process, and shall I say, a very expensive venture, that the Ontario Superior Court, Judge Braid, dismissed the application brought forward by the Carpenters Union, actually two members of the union out of Toronto, against me last year for introducing a motion at Regional Council to support fairness and tendering. As I had stated in the past, my focus has always been on ensuring that all tradespeople who live and pay taxes here in our region can work on local infrastructure projects. Every qualified local contractor should have the ability to work on public infrastructure, and that was the point of my motion. The case was brought against me, was in fact without merit, and led to a costly, very costly, legal process that put me and my family through, frankly, unnecessary hardship. I am obviously pleased with the judge's ruling, who definitively dismissed the case and found there was absolutely no conflict of interest. Of course, I'm proud to serve the region with integrity and commitment, and thank those who have supported me through this experience, especially my family, my wife, Sarah, and of course, my council colleagues. I just felt it was important to publicly state that, as sometimes these rulings get buried in legalese, and I think, in fact, I asked the clerk today when the last time an MCIA application was brought towards a councillor, and she couldn't think of one. So an important act that we all, I know, take very seriously, but in this case, one, again, that I believe was brought without merit, but it's done now, and we can move forward. And most importantly, we're also happy to have fair and open tendering here now in the region that will allow all local qualified contractors and their employees to bid local projects. And I know for that part, local taxpayers will greatly benefit. So work is done on that one. And I want to thank you, Chair Redman, for taking the time, and council and those that are watching from home for the opportunity to address this important matter.
We're very happy with the result for you, Councillor Harris, and thank you for providing that input. And I know that you had the full support of all of your colleagues through this very long ordeal. So that's very good news. Next item of other business, Mr. Lauckner, you have something to share?
I do, Council. And one of the not so great things about COVID is you can't introduce someone formally in the room at the beginning of the meeting or during break. Perhaps get to know them. I did want to introduce a new member of the team, Connie MacDonald. Connie, this is day 8, I believe. Connie is our new Chief Strategy and Communications Officer. Connie most recently came to us from Laurier. And Connie has worked, many of you know her from other settings. She worked in a hospital, worked at the Lynn, and worked for an MPP and government house leader, John Malloy. So Connie, welcome to the team. Welcome to your first day of long day of meetings, and really glad you're here.
Great, thank you so much, Bruce. Appreciate the warm welcome and introduction. I'm really excited to be working with you all. And I just kicked all my kids out of the room and off camera, so parenting and working, I know many can relate. So,
well, Connie, on behalf of council, welcome. You come with an amazing skill set and track record, and I was just so impressed after sort of the information dump the first couple of days. You kept coming back, so really happy to have you part of the team and being strategic, and a little person's creeping up behind you.
just say
hi. Anyway, welcome to the motley crew, Connie. You're very welcome, and we know that you will help us not only achieve great things, but help communicate it with the 630,000 people that we all represent.
Thank you again very much.
So I have no questions. We'll now start a vote to approve the bylaws as listed. This is moved by Councillor Jowett and seconded by Councillor Kiefer. The bylaws are listed A through H. I would ask you to use your icons to vote. That is carried. Now, sadly, we will take a motion to adjourn. I know you hate to have this happen. This is moved by Councillor Lorentz and seconded by Councillor McGarry, so you could use your icons. I was going to dare someone to vote against it, but I'm afraid some of you would. It's been a very productive day, and I really did value the input by the delegations on our budget. So thank you very much, colleagues. Take the rest of the night off.
Thank you ever so much.
Happy
Thank you, Madam
holidays,
Chair.
everyone.
Good job. See you tomorrow.